I was feeling that song for sure. Man, we worshiping up to some Cher in this place, man. That was freaking awesome. Thank you, guys. Man, isn't our worship team so talented? They're so good. I just love just their heart in leading us in worship each and every single week, that they really understand the goodness of God, His love, and they want to convey that to us each and every single week. And I'm going to be honest, there's a lot of times where I'm out of breath, man, worshiping to that song. I wasn't really worshiping to it, but I was bopping, dancing.
You were worshiping to that song?
No, I wasn't worshiping.
That's weird.
But
is Mel in here? Oh, that's even more weird.
There are a lot of times that I come into this place and I do have things going on in my life. I do have things that sometimes weigh me down. There are a lot of times where I will sit in just maybe a circumstance I'm facing, and it really is somewhat draining. But when I come into this place and just lift my hands in worship and really focus on God and His love, I promise you it really does something for me. And I don't say that it might be that way for you or not, but I know for me, I can come into this place and just spend some time worshiping, and man, I promise, I do feel like a weight has been lifted. And I do appreciate everything that our worship team does to just prepare and to plan and to create that atmosphere of faith and love in this place. And so I really do want to say I appreciate you guys a ton wherever you all are at. So today we are kicking off a brand new series, Tender Loving Care. And I'm just also going to be honest right out of the gate. This isn't one of those series that I really wanted to do, but it is a series that I felt like we had to do. Over the last year, since COVID really last March, so for a year and a half, I have had more people come to me as a pastor wanting marriage advice, wanting help in their marriage, wanting just maybe even a mediator between a husband and wife. I've had more guys, because I am in a lot of circles where I play ball with guys, I work out with a bunch of dudes, and they know I'm a pastor, and so they have been coming to me in the last year and a half, I would say more in the last year and a half than in the first 8.5 years of me being a pastor combined. And so I just felt that, man, I can't wait till next February. You know, a lot of times around Valentine's Day, we'll talk about love and marriage and all of that. But I was talking to the team, I'm like, you know, after this last guy came in, I'm like, I have to put something out. We have to go there. We have to talk about it. We have to give some tools, some resources. We have to start addressing this, because really we're at a place right now, especially because of COVID and what it did to us. It really not only accelerated things that might have been a little bit of a problem before, but it really exposed some things that might have been minor, but now they are major. I heard one pastor say it like this: you know, through COVID or before COVID, most people kept busy enough that they can outrun their brokenness. But COVID caused us to slow down, and then we were in the same house or same proximity with the same people for a long period of time with not a lot of fluff, not a lot of things that we could keep, you know, busy with our time. And so those relationships we had to be very intentional with, but we also, just because of quarantine and all of that, we had to really face issues that we might have been able to outrun for a long time, and they all just came to the surface over the last year. And so I really hope that this is going to be just a help to you in your marriage, in your walk. And then also, and I know I'm doing all the talking right now, also I want anyone that's here that maybe is not married, I want you to really hear this. If you are single in this place, this is a great opportunity over the next few weeks for you to be taking a lot of notes, right? Working on the one you while you search to find the one, your spouse. And so this would be a great opportunity for you. I also want to say that there may be some of you here that are widowed and your spouse is no longer here. And I know for you, going through something like this might feel heavy. It might hurt a little as we're talking about things that have to pertain to a marriage relationship and your spouse is no longer here and you feel the weight of that. You sit in that, and I want you to know right up front, we do not want you to sit in that alone. We want you to find someone you can come. We want to talk through things that we maybe have for you that can help you in your season and where you're at. And then lastly, those of you that maybe have been divorced, are going through a divorce, or contemplating a divorce, this isn't something over the next few weeks that we want you to sit in any kind of guilt or any kind of shame whatsoever. We're going to remove all of that, right? Paul says that forgetting what is behind, I press forward for the prize. And so we're not going to dwell on the past. We're not going to sit here and make you feel guilty or shame because of something that's happened. But we can say from this day forward, we have some things that we feel like can even help you in your relationships that you have. And so that's my kind of opening and kind of disclaimer to everything we're going to talk about.
Yeah. What else you got? You're on a roll.
Well, I mean, I got to get my notes open. Go ahead.
So yeah, COVID exposed a lot. We actually did a lot of research over statistics. And so alcohol sales up 20% since COVID. 20%. That's crazy. Pornography increased more than 38% in the last year and a half. And so I work with youth, okay? We're going to stay here for a minute. This is what we were like. If your kids are here, you might want to plug their ears. But not really, because they're watching it too. Don't be naive. I'm a kind of a cynical. Is that right? I'm cynical. I don't, like with our students, I just assume all of our students are watching porn and all of them are having sex. It's just where I'm at. And honestly, that perspective helps me remove any shock that might happen and really address the reality of our current culture, okay? Parents, if your kids have a smartphone and you don't have access to putting limitations on that smartphone, they've seen porn. Fact. It's everywhere, even on the apps that you think are okay. And I want to just encourage people, as someone who has struggled with porn, as someone who is dealing with counseling around the sexual addictions that are alive and real, I want guys, I can speak to the guys, even though statistically it's up there for women too. But guys, there's no shame in this. There's no condemnation of this. I even want to say, if you've seen porn or looked at porn or currently look at porn, I personally don't care. As a pastor, I don't care. I care about the root behind it. I care about why you feel like you need to. And so if you struggle in this, or there's like any shame or guilt or condemnation, even as I bring this up, I want you to know that the dudes on stage are safe people to come talk to. They're safe people in this church. We want to help you because I've actually been in this battle. Seriously, like I get it. I get the draw. In fact, I'm more convinced today that men don't really care that much about sex. We care about desire. Because if you have sex in your marriage without desire, that only is good for like 2 weeks. And then it's like, I edited myself, but I was going to say something that was very provocative. But then it's like, what the heck? You know? Like if there's no desire. And so what porn does is it creates this incredible fantasy that is a lie, so you have to address that. But guys don't care about the lie. Why? Because when you look at porn, you create the fantasy world where there's never the word no and you're always desired, even though it's a lie. And that's the pull. And so, of course, as guys, we're going to struggle with some of this stuff. We got to talk about it, especially as a church. We got to stop like sweeping this under the rug as if men in the church don't deal with this, as if women in the church don't deal with this. We got to create a safe place for you to understand that there is no shame and condemnation. And guess what? You might continue to struggle for the rest of your life, but let's struggle together. Let's talk about this together, because sin only grows when it's hidden. Yeah, come on. And so we ain't going to hide behind pornography. We're going to address it. We're going to realize that this is a real issue in our culture. This is a real reality for our young people. They are now more. So when I was growing up, the average age was 11. And we thought that was crazy. Do you know statistically the average age is now 7? My son turned 7 today. 7. So you can continue to sit in this world of being naive as a parent. There's no way. No, there is absolute way, because it's so easy. Even on our kids' apps, okay? I had to go in and redo the parental structure on our kids' app because there were pornographic games being shown to my kids on kids' YouTube. But kids' YouTube is safe. So parents, this is something that we cannot be naive in. This is not something that we can't be aware of. We have to be aware of the pull. We have to be aware of the addiction that it creates. But we also have to be aware that if you struggle with this, you're not a bad person. You're okay. But we can overcome this together.
Yeah, and I really want you to hear us say that sin does grow in darkness, but healing takes place in the light. And so for you to get a little bit of healing, it's going to take a little bit of vulnerability, but we're trying to tell you that that's okay to be in that vulnerable spot. We feel like this is a safe place for us to even have these conversations, even from stage like this on a Sunday morning. And I also want to say that this is something that we need to address. I know even last year, I don't know if you heard about this incident, but there was a website out there called Ashley Madison. And basically this website and this app just existed for married people to have affairs with other married people. And I mean, there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions of married couples on this app and on this service. Well, it actually got hacked, and anyone who ever put in an email address to this last year, those email addresses just got blasted out there on the internet. And so if someone was actually on this site trying to find a hookup with another married person to have an affair, their website, their emails and all that stuff just got exposed, but it also exposed
But there were hundreds of pastors that got exposed.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Because it's real, because there is that desire piece. And I know through COVID even, this all got exposed. Do you think it kind of stopped it or hindered people going there? No. Matter of fact, through COVID, their actual increase per day of amount of users signing up increased. Over 4,000 people per day are signing up for this website. It's crazy. I mean, this is a website for married people to have affairs with other married people.
Secretly.
So it's
Some people are like, Ashley Madison.
No.
Hopefully not.
No, and check this out. This is actually from, I really want you to hear this. It's kind of going to be the foundation for where we go. Ashley Madison, I'm just going to quote this. Ashley Madison, Chief Strategy Officer, Paul Cable, said in an interview whenever this all got exposed, he said this pandemic is having a dramatic impact on relationships. What we're learning from the pandemic is this is going to change a lot of different family structures. If you don't maintain a connection to your spouse through interpersonal communication, you're going to find at the end of the day that you don't really have a relationship. What you have is a roommate. They even recognize that, hey, this is why our site is growing. And he's even saying if people don't work on their communication and on their own relationship, we're going to keep getting hundreds of thousands of users to our site. It almost sounded like he didn't want that to happen, but they just captured what's already happening already. So it's crazy.
Yeah, and so we wanted to talk about Tinder, Love and Carry. Get it? Some of you guys are like, what's Tinder? They spelled tender wrong. Well, if you aren't aware, as of 2020, couples meeting online surpassed couples meeting in person. Guys, this is the way our kids are going to potentially meet people. More than 50% of couples are meeting online. And Tinder is one of those apps that you can get on, sign up, and their tagline thing is swipe left, swipe right. You swipe left for people you don't want to go on dates with or hook up with. You swipe right for the people that you do. And here's what's so interesting about the app Tinder is there's a lot of pros and cons between the online dating apps. You know, pros are like it saves time, you meet new people, you get to have the power, you have the freedom to choose, and any initial rejection is anonymous. We love that. You don't know who's swiping left on your profile. But with pros always come cons, right? Cons are, it can encourage compulsive use. The average users on online dating platforms use it 35 minutes a day. That's even if they're already in a relationship. It could be catfish. Do you know what catfish is? If you don't, ask your kids. Appearance-based, judgmental, flaky. It promotes hookup culture since it is majority sex-focused. And it's estimated that 80% of users achieve nothing from the apps. 80%. And so what Ashley Madison's chief executive dude said is we have relationship issues because we view our significant others as roommates instead of lovers who grow and change and communicate.
Yeah, so we want to talk about how do we prevent all of that in marriage, everything that we've talked about up to this moment. And it's not like we have like some secret formula. And speaking of that, I do want to say right here that we're not up here. And matter of fact, the reason why I had Corey join me, and this is very much more conversational between the two of us in this, is that I don't want to just stand up here and preach to you a sermon and you go home saying, oh man, that was really good. I want a marriage just like Pastor Shannock has. You see, I want you to have the freedom to have the marriage that works for you. As a matter of fact, next week, I want to hit this home so much. Next week, we're actually going to have the pastors and the spouses. There's going to be 8 of us up here on stage, and we're just going to be going through different questions and talking about our relationships. And the real reason behind that is because we want you to actually see that we're all different in our marriage relationships. It's not like, hey, here's the exact style and it's cookie cutter, so just adopt this into your marriage. We want you to know you have the freedom to work on the marriage that works for you. And even while we go through some of this stuff, yeah, we believe that some of the things we have are definitely wisdom pieces. They are, I think, good advice. There are some things that are going to be great resources and a help to you in your marriage. But also, this is going to take work on your behalf. Don't just think, oh, I listen to that. If I just do exactly what they tell me, instantly it's going to be beautiful. No, you're going to have to work on it for you.
Yeah. And so here, 1 Corinthians 13, if you're taking notes, right, you hear this at every wedding, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, it's the love chapter. Here's what's crazy about 1 Corinthians chapter 13, if you look at it. In verse 4, it tells us 2 things that love is, and then it goes on to list a whole bunch of things on what love is not, right? Love is not envy, it does not boast, all these things. What we want to do today and the next couple weeks is just focus on the 2 things that love is, because the scriptures only tell us that love is 2 things. So we're not giving you a whole bunch of lists on working on these things. We're giving you 2 things. Can you remember 2 things? And this applies for your marriage. This applies for your relationships. This applies for the people that you work with. This applies for everything. Love is patient and kind. That's it. I wonder how different our marriages would look as a whole if all of us were more patient and more kind. So how to be more patient and kind, we got 2 things for you this morning, and they're just generic. Again, I actually hate giving marriage advice. Hate it. It's the same reason for why I hate it when my wife asks the waiter or waitress what they like on the menu. Because we all have different taste buds, as if you're gonna like what this person likes. And usually when that person says what they like, my wife's like, oh, that's gross. I'm like, why ask, you know? So marriage advice to me, it's like, oh, here's what you need to do. No, there's some universal principles that are good, but again, like what Pastor was talking about, they apply differently to you, and that's okay. Because we all have different personalities, we all have different likes, we all have different desires, which is why it's so important for us to know, number 1, you have to understand the 5 love languages. And this is like, oh, once we start talking about love languages, I'm telling you guys, this is like a marriage cheat sheet, okay? Dudes, if your wives are unhappy, it's probably because you haven't been loving her the way that she receives love, because you're not aware of her love language. And if your marriage is still on rocky soil, it's probably because you're ignoring her love language even though you know it. Don't want to admit it? Okay. So what are the 5 love languages? Pastor, what do you got? What are the 5? Can you name them without looking?
Yeah, the 5 love languages are words of affirmation, quality time, physical touch, acts of service, and gifts.
Obviously,
Yeah, gifts is my lowest, so yeah.
Weird how that works.
Yeah, forgot that one.
And what's Mel's?
Oh, Mel's is quality time, for sure.
Quality time.
Yeah. So knowing that, though, in our relationship, knowing that Melanie's love language is quality time, whenever I perceive she might be in a funk or be distant, I got to think to myself, when was the last time we just hung out without the kids? When was the last time I showed her some attention and some affection where she really feels like her love tank is filling up in that quality time segment? And then the roles are reversed for me. It's affirmation for me. It always is. If you listen to our podcast, Two Pastors and a Mic, we talk about this affirmation piece almost weekly. Because it's not like you fill our tank with affirmation and then like we're good for a while. Like, no, sometimes it's a weekly, if not daily thing. I need just a little bit of affirmation to keep that tank full.
Just a tad?
Yeah, just a little bit. Just a little bit, for
This
sure.
guy needs it all. But I'm judging him because I need it all. So there's a mirror here. I make fun of him for his lack of words of affirmation, but this is like our biggest marriage struggle. Any tension that I have in my marriage, it can always be traced back to I'm feeling unaffirmed every time. And so I'm angry about something else. Like yesterday, I was so mad at my wife because she sent out a group text and didn't communicate to me first, even though we had communicated previously that we weren't going to send out this group text. So then she sends it. And I'm royally ticked off, okay? And I am justified. I am right, because we talked about it. So I went up there like, why'd you send out a group text? I'm downstairs working out. Why would you do that? And she's like, what do you mean? We had to invite these people. And I was like, no, you didn't. We talked about it beforehand. Don't you remember this conversation? And you know what the real issue was? I hadn't been affirmed in the last couple of days. So I go 0 to 100 real quick. Why? Because my love language hadn't been ticked. So I act like this is the issue, but it ain't the issue. And this is what we do. We do this in the thing that you're fighting about currently, if you're like, this is such awkward stuff because I fought with my wife on the way here. I don't even want to look at you. You just, it always goes back to who's going to jump off the hamster wheel first. Because you're justified and you're right. But do you like sleeping on the couch? Do you like the tension that you create in your marriage because you're right and you're justified? And she's right and she's justified. Or maybe she's wrong and unjustified. But are you still going to jump off the hamster wheel first? And this is the tension that we live in, and this is the pride that we deal with. And my world was rocked about 3 weeks ago, okay? So I serve my wife really well, like really, really well. I'm not looking for affirmation. I'm not looking for judgment. I serve her really well. So well that people notice when you do life with us. And I will hear the compliments from people, man, you serve your wife so well. And you know what I will do? I'll puff my chest up. And then I'll start getting ticked off because it's not reciprocated. I do serve my wife real well. I bring my wife coffee almost every single morning. That's a fact. I bring my wife coffee almost every single morning. You know what has been happening over the last several months? I've started been ticked off while I'm serving my wife because you know what? She don't serve me the way I want to be served. And here I am going to bring you coffee, but I have a bad attitude about bringing you coffee. And I went out to lunch with this dude, and he was talking about like his marriage is in a wreck. She left and everything like this. And so we were just talking back and forth. And he said that he wasn't going to stop pursuing his wife because when he made a vow on their wedding day, he could give 2 fricks. He didn't say that, but he could give 2 fricks about her leaving him because his vow was something he made. And I remember like my mind just getting blown the last couple weeks just thinking about this. Because regardless of what happens in my marriage, it was a challenge to me. I made a vow, and I want to be a man of my words. So even if my wife starts treating me like trash, that's not going to change the way I treat her because I made a vow. And I'm not responsible for my wife's vow. She's a whole person. But if I am responsible for my vow, I promise you it'll change the way she looks and views me. So I've decided I'm going to jump off the hamster wheel first. And who cares if certain aspects of our marriage aren't going the way that I want them to go? It's up to me to respond, to react, to have conversations about the things I don't like, even if they're difficult, because I promise you, it's worth it. I hate living in tension in my marriage. Hate it. Why are you looking at me like that?
Dude, you're just on a roll. I like it. I'm learning. I'm learning right now from you.
You always say, if you don't like what you've been getting, look at what you've been giving. And this has been true in my marriage. And I want you guys to recognize there's no shame or guilt. If your marriage is in a tough season, or if it wasn't a tough season, marriage is always this. It's always roller coaster. There's no such thing as a marriage that goes like this. They're lying. They are lying. Because then kids get involved. And once kids get involved, it's like this again. And we grow and we change. Hopefully you're growing and changing. Hopefully you're not the same person you were when you married your spouse. But I want to encourage you. In the ebbs and flows of our marriage life, you always have to go back to that wedding day when you were so excited and remind yourself of that passion and desire that you had for your spouse. And if you're missing that, then you need to do some work. And marriage is always work. But being married for 7 years, the hard things have always been worth it. Always.
Yeah, and so the first thing was the 5 love languages. So if you have not yet taken that test, it's very simple. You can go to the5lovelanguages.com. The number 5, the5lovelanguages.com. You can take the test. It takes, I think, 8 to 10 minutes, maybe tops, and it'll kind of show what your love language is. Your spouse can take that. And I would encourage you, because we bring it up all the time, but there's still people that we have conversation with that they've never taken the time to do it. And so it's the very first thing I'm going to challenge you with. Like today, by the end of the day today, you need to get with your spouse and make sure you take that. The other cool thing is your kids can also take it, or you can take it with your kids and you can get their love languages. And so if you got kids in the picture, you can know maybe what their love language is to know how to better love them as well. And so it's very simple.
Yeah, so my wife, the last time she preached, she told the church that her love language was gifts, which was news to me because we've taken the test, and for 6 years it was quality time, okay? And she said this on stage. First time I ever heard it. My love language is gifts. And I'm like, no, it's not. So we go home and we have a conversation about it. Okay, I'm the cheap one. I like to use the word frugal, but I'm the cheap one. I'm the saver. I'm like the controller. I'm learning to let go because it's a marriage issue. I'm learning to let go. But guess what I'm doing for Christmas this year? Because she told everybody that it was gifts. I've been saving for like 6 months. I'm going all out on some gifts. Because I'm learning. I know, Linda, you laugh, you're clapping at me. I know, I'm learning. Our counseling sessions work. Oh, I need help, so I go get help.
No, it's good. And I love what he said there in that if you don't like what you've been getting, look at what you've been giving. And that really is all about the love languages. And I like to say it in 2 different ways. Number 1, you reap what you sow, right? If I sow an apple seed, it's not like I'm going to get an orange tree. Right? And so I'm going to reap what I sow into my marriage, into that relationship. But not only will I reap what I sow, I will reap where I sow. If I plant a tree out front because I want to, sit in its shade years down the road, I'm not going to be able to sit in that shade at home if I plant it out front here. And so I'm going to reap where I sow as well. And so sow into the relationship that is your marriage that I think produces some of the best, feeling of just really being loved, and that relationship is so integral, I think, to our lives.
So be patient and kind around the love languages, but learn those love languages, and then be patient and kind some more. Number 2 is this, and I do this through premarital counseling. I hate premarital counseling. I just think that marriage, you should always be in counseling. Because you're jacked up too. Don't look at me like that.
Ongoing.
Number 2 is you have to know and understand the 4 myths of marriage. We go through this in premarital counseling. There are 4 myths in marriage. The first one is that marriage is 50-50. It's not 50-50. It's 100-100. See, when we look at marriage as you do 50% of the work and I do 50% of the work, that someone's going to be ticked off at somebody else because someone's not going to be pulling their weight. But if you look at marriage like it's 100-100, and you made a vow, be a man or woman of your words. If you give 100%, I promise you, your spouse will give 100%. And even if you start to lack, that other 100 is going to get you back to 100. It works every single time. So do not look at your marriage as 50-50. It has to be 100-100.
Yeah, and I really think that, when you're giving 100% of yourself, like he said, not the 50-50, because in a 50-50, there are going to be some disappointments. There are going to be some unmet expectation. But when you give 100% of yourself, and we even mean like not just the good, but bring all of who you are, the good and the bad. And are you going to have shortcomings that you're going to let your spouse down in different ways? Yes. But as you're giving 100%, there's that ability to work on knowing that your spouse is also giving 100%. That just makes the marriage work. And so it's not 50-50, it's 100-100. Right? The next one, the next myth would be that your spouse is going to complete you. I hear this all the time. Like, my life's just not complete until I met this man and he completed me, right?
Well, Jerry Maguire, right?
I was getting ready to say the Tom Cruise. Jerry Maguire, you complete me.
You complete me. Which is another form of porn. The fantasy world, that the love stories that we all watch. Because then women will watch this and then they'll say, well, why aren't you as romantic as, what's that movie? The Notebook. Why don't you woo me like The Notebook? And what happens is you might not be watching porn, but you've created an ideology that is the same ideology that porn does in men. And what you expect is you expect your Prince Charming to do everything that you see in P.S. I Love You. And then there's tension in your marriage that your husband knows nothing about because you've created a fantasy world inside your mind that's not fair. Because you expected your knight in shining armor to complete you. But the problem with that sentence is that no one completes you except for Christ. You were complete when you got to the altar. No one told you that. And so you've been trying to find happiness, trying to find completion in your spouse because you think that life starts when you get married, but life started at conception. And so the reality is you have to understand that no one is your better half. Oh my gosh, trigger. I'm learning triggers right now in counseling. This is a trigger. I can't stand it, even if it's done jokingly, when someone introduces their spouse as their better half or their other half. Because you're not a half person. You never were. You never will be. You're a complete, full human being. And when you speak that into existence, even if it's a joke, it subconsciously trains your mind to believe that you're only half, that you're only good enough with your spouse. You are a complete human being, and when you recognize your completion in Christ, how could you not honor the person even if you're in a disagreement? How could you not view them through the lens of Christ? So done rant.
The third myth is you can change them. Once we get married, then we'll work on that part. And like I said earlier, like especially to the singles here, you need to be working on you and the one that is you as you're searching for the one that is your spouse. And so we can't have this mindset that we're going to be able to change someone once we are married to them. And really, it's back to the whole thing that we say even all the time in this place, that people are not assignments. No one wants to be treated like they are an agenda on someone's checklist. And so I think when we carry that into a marriage relationship, we really devalue our spouse by saying, this is something that I need to work on to change in you, instead of working on something maybe together if the other person is aware of maybe something that they have as a shortcoming or whatever it may be, or maybe they're just completely blind to it at all, but going into it as they're like this project to fix instead of just a person to love, man, that is the wrong way to look at it.
I love that. And last but not least is marriage is hard. Marriage is hard. It's a myth. Marriage is not hard. Marriage is amazing. Marriage has hard moments. Marriage has hard seasons. But in and of itself, marriage is not hard. And when we speak it into existence, it becomes what you say. So when we say our marriage is hard, that's the reality. You have hard moments. You have hard seasons. It's the same sentence when people say life is just hard. Life is not hard. Life is amazing. You have hard seasons. You have hard moments. Yes, you ride the roller coaster of life, and a lot of people tend to be in the valley for a long, long period, and it can seem hard. It can feel hard, but life is not hard. Life is amazing with hard moments. But if we can focus on the positives instead of all the negatives, I promise the trajectory of your life shifts. The same with your marriage. If you stop looking at your marriage as hard and start looking at your marriage as it's amazing, watch it change. Watch you both shift. Watch you both grow. Guys, there are some conversations that some of us in this room have been avoiding because they are hard conversations. But I promise you, the aftermath of what will happen after you go through that season of hardship brings that joy, brings that realness, that authenticity, that ability to grow in your life so that you both are growing and becoming better people.
Yeah, becoming better people, because it's not about finding, a better person. It's about becoming a better person. And so whatever season you're in, we want you to know that we need to work on being patient and kind, because that's what love does. And as we kind of close out today, I do want to just remind you of just the command that Jesus gave us, the only command that we're under in the new covenant. Jesus says, not love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus takes it to a higher level and says, love as I have loved you. And I know for me personally, sometimes just the makeup of who I am, I can go out and I can love strangers so well. I can love people that are outside of my family just so well, and I'm so forgiving and I'm so gracious and I'm so loving. But sometimes I don't take that same kind of attitude into my marriage. And to be that, long-suffering, to be over-gracious, if that's even a thing. But I really feel like to love as Jesus loved us, that starts in our marriage relationships. It starts with our spouse, and then it goes down from there. And it's just a reminder, right, that when we think about it in terms of how Jesus loved us, oh man, it's unconditional. It's so amazing. He is so loving towards us. He doesn't, right? We said love is patient and kind. A little bit later on, it says love is not or does not keep records of wrong. But how many of us have a huge long list of everything wrong our spouse ever did? So when we keep that in mind, man, we're to love others, especially our spouse, the way that Jesus loved us. Man, it challenges us to love in a higher and better way. Is that right? Amen?
Is that good? Is that helpful? We want the marriages of Hill City Church to flourish and thrive, and we believe in you. And we also want you to know, if you need help in a specific area, we're available for you. We can go grab coffee. We can go to lunch, whatever. We can go to dinner. We want to be a part of your lives. We want to help you achieve all the things that you believe that God is doing in your life and calling you to. And we want to be a part of that. We don't want you to have anything hidden in your closet, because for far too long, the church has been the place where you pretend to be like everything's fine. And then everything gets swept under the rug, and it's, how are you? I'm good, praise Jesus. And you go home to your spouse, and maybe your spouse doesn't even know the skeletons in your closet. Guys, the skeletons never get fixed until they become unhidden. And so we want this place to be a place where no one feels like they have to hide anything. Not only do you never have to hide anything, you won't be judged, you won't be shamed, you won't be guilted into those things. Because the reality is you are capable of doing incredible things. We have to stop hiding them.
Yeah, that's so good. So 3 things real quick as we close. Number 1, next week, man, I'm so excited. We're going to have so much fun with the entire pastoral staff up on stage. You're going to hear us answer questions that we've gotten, and it's just going to be, I think, so much, not only fun, but you're actually going to learn something next week as well. It's going to be a great help and tool for your marriage. The second thing is, man, I'm going to be singing that Cher song all day. I'm just going to be honest. I'm up here, and it's like just going in my mind, but I love it. The third thing is, don't forget, we have the Angel Tree and those kids that we're going to sponsor. They'll be out there not only this week, but next week as well. And so if you need to have a week to think about it, if you're going to be able to do it with your budget, that's okay. We'll be here next week too. Mila will be out there to answer any question you may have. And then lastly, Hold
on. Last announcement. We forgot to share it, but it was shared on social media. Our worship team is putting together a Christmas album, but the first song gets released this Friday. And it is awesome.
Yeah.
Because I've already heard it.
Yeah.
So if you're not on socials, you need to figure it out. Apple Music, Spotify, it'll be on everything November 12th, this Friday, so be on the lookout for that. It's pretty dope.
It's so dope, and one of the best things we've ever put out and they've put out, and it is just so much fun. So be looking for that this Friday, right? All right, well, that's all we have today. I hope to see you next week, but as you leave this place, just know that you're loved. Happy, 'cause all the best things in life are free, so